Hello, friends. What a year it has been. We are coming up on the end of 2025. Whew. We've had quite a year from Trump taking office, the North Carolina Supreme Court race continuing halfway into 2025 before a wave of mid-decade redistricting kicked off in July, spurred by the President of the United States, who decided that he wanted his party, his team, to win no matter what you all say, no matter what the American people say. It has felt like 10 years packed into one. We're going to talk about it. I'm Marina Jenkins, Executive Director of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee.
I'm John Bisognano, President of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee.
And thank you for joining us. This is Drawing the Line for our final episode of 2025. John, what a year. How you feeling?
I am tired. I am energized and excited and ready to power into 2026, and also so tired because, what was supposed to be a reasonably ho-hum year it turned out to be not so ho-hum after all when it comes to the redistricting world.
Yeah.
And thus we are here. We didn't have a podcast at the beginning of this year.
No, we didn't. We didn't have a lot of things at the beginning of this year that we have now.
I had one fewer child.
You did. I know. Yeah, 2025 has been some really
what a gift.
High highs and some low lows all around.
True.
So here we are, and we've got some recent news. So let's start with the weeds of where we are, because since we have been with y'all, some really exciting updates have happened, specifically out of Indiana. Biz, do you want to tell folks what happened in Indiana if they haven't already
as
seen?
we talked about? Yeah, we talked about this in the last episode. But more than half of the Republican caucus in the Senate showed up and voted against a new gerrymandered map. Period. That's a sentence I did not think I would be saying at the beginning of this year as we look back on the full year in review. But that's a real thing that happened. And last episode, we talked about the horrific threats and political violence that folks had been facing. And I think what we saw is that backfired for any number of reasons. But the reality that this Trump administration, FBI put endless pressure on these folks, and FBI meaning they didn't investigate enough and figure out exactly who was making all of these calls or where the threats were coming from quick enough. But what we did see was legislators band together and say, for the first time in recent memory, no, we're not going to be bullied into any stance, let alone for a new gerrymandered map, but we're not going to allow blanket threats and endless bullying to tell us what we know is wrong to do. And so, I'm proud of the Republican legislators. I'm not sure they'd care for my pride or not, but, I do. I think we're living in such a difficult moment for democracy when everything is slowly under threat and getting eroded away, and you have a Supreme Court that's taking endless action to try and decrease the ability for the American people to have their voices heard and go to the electorate. And then every once in a while, you get this flash of hope that you see members of either party being threatened in specifically in Indiana in this case, and the senators showed up and said, no, we know what's right to do. We know what we were already on the book saying,
right.
And we're not going to just be bullied into some kind of absurd reality that you want to create so that you don't have to face any accountability in Congress. And you obviously being Donald Trump.
Yeah. And it wasn't like it was a small margin. I mean, as you said, it was half of the Senate Republican caucus in the Indiana legislature, in the Indiana Senate. So it's amazing because I think there was so much, there was such a deep sense of nobody knew what was really going to happen, right? From people who are working on the ground in Indiana, folks with good intel into, the conversations happening within the Republican caucus in the Senate. And, up until the day before their vote, nobody seemed to have any level of confidence as to what was going to happen. So it really was kept very, close to their chest, which was, made it sort of all the more dramatic when it was this kind of resounding rejection of the effort by, Donald Trump and his cohort of, villains that they just don't want this to be the way that power is gained or held in this country. And it's just like really profound and powerful to see that rejection, that standing up for principles and standing up for our democracy, and just a rare moment of that. And to your point, a sense of hope. And it was really, really inspiring to watch it all happen.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, again, I mean, it wasn't a sense of hope from a Democratic Party standpoint.
Right.
It was a sense of hope from a democracy standpoint. Like,
Right.
and you saw, I mean, I'm sure not everyone tuned in to watch the live stream of all of the different hearings. Some of you may have.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast, you may have.
You probably did.
But you saw like an endless stream of Republican lawmakers that were pro gerrymandering go to the podium in the Senate and make these bizarre statements and rhetoric. And it was so clear. It's like one of those moments where you watch it and you're like, oh God, you're just performing for Trump. Like for one person, and all of their rationale that they were using was like not tangible. They would go up and just say things like, if you wake up the morning after and we lose the House because we didn't steal the 2 seats that Donald Trump told us we had to steal, you're going to feel bad about it. And I think all the members on the side that were against the gerrymander were kind of like, we won't feel bad about it. Like, why don't you go and win a fair fight? Why don't you go and win on these current maps if this is such a problem? And, I've said that a billion times over the course of the last few months. And it's the same in Texas. Like when you talk about, and it will be the same in Florida. If Florida picks up the pen, it's like, why wouldn't you leave the maps as is and try and win on the current seats? And if not, again, why? What's your purpose of picking up the pen? Because it can only be either political or frankly racial, that you're trying to gerrymander people out. And so why? And in Indiana, we saw people in the end say, no, we're not going to do this. And we're not going to feel bad about it.
Well, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens with the threats that were, there was reporting that, Trump was communicating like Indiana is never going to have a road paved again with federal dollars, that they're going to pull all federal funding from the state, that there's, all of this infrastructure money that the state could have gotten, it's not going to get. And, and whatever, honestly, like, at this point, it's kind of like, well, what federal money is going anywhere these days? But, but the sort of threats of we're gonna, keep and pull back any federal funding because you guys didn't do our bidding here. And yet, but then you see this like very classic Trumpian, like someone asks him about it and he's like, oh no, I wasn't even really paying attention to that. I wasn't really involved. Like,
it's incredible.
Like, the reporter asked him in the Oval, like, this happened. This was a huge review. Everybody, like, people have been following so closely. Trump was posting on Truth Social, like, with all these threats and all this craziness for weeks. And then when asked about the fact that he was rejected, that his political game was rejected by these Republican senators in Indiana, he says, I don't even know her. Like, that's where he goes. Real. And so, like, I don't know, maybe the realization that all of these threats maybe are actually empty, because he would have to own failure for him to follow through with any of those threats. And I don't know if he's capable of that.
Yeah, I know. It's a weird paradigm for him to live in. And one of the things that's not, I think, getting explored enough is like, everyone's talking about how Trump failed, which is real. And that did happen, regardless of whether he says he pretends he didn't know anything about it or not. The other truth that I don't think is getting as much coverage is Trump appointed J.D. Vance to be like the captain of this mission for a lot of reasons, right? He's made him like the gerrymandering guy. And so like he had him fly in and out of Indianapolis to have specific meetings with senators, one famously behind a bunch of closed curtains. Like that was the only thing he did. He flew into Indy, did a meeting behind closed curtains with senators, and then left. And what a tremendous failure. For having put so much time, and Trump continually says, I didn't put much time to it. You put time, you put American taxpayer resources into that plane going back and forth. You put time that could have been used by the vice president doing something useful, like trying to get pharmaceuticals prices down or something. Instead, he was back and forth on a plane trying to go to Indianapolis to convince senators to gerrymander these seats, and failed miserably at the ability to try and convince these folks that this was the right thing to do, because it was the wrong thing to do.
Right.
Yeah, the
Right.
Vance part of this is really interesting.
Well, and speaking of his vice presidents, like also maybe like threats of violence in a state where your former vice president, who you wanted to be unalived, like maybe that wasn't the move. Maybe that's not the move to get Mike Pence's friends in Indiana to do your bidding. Like,
I mean, that was like when he picked Vance, everyone touted Vance as like the Appalachian, central Midwestern-ish like hero. And so in theory, he should be able to go deliver in Indiana. But you're right. I mean, like, obviously, Mike Pence did not have a great relationship, currently does not have a great relationship with Donald Trump, reasonably so. And I think a lot of people are still loyal to Mike Pence in that state. And they remember that the way Donald Trump acted during January 6th. And I would remember that too if my friend were, I was very fearful of my friend's life.
Hard to forget.
And so, yeah, I think watching it all unfold it's so multifaceted. But it's really interesting to see this moment where pushback has become so comfortable. I mean, it wasn't comfortable. It was never comfortable. Brave.
Very brave. Well,
courageous.
And particularly in the face of actual literal bomb threats.
Yeah.
Swatting, like just craziness.
And it's a good reminder that what happens sometimes you see in these legislatures is like people band together, either party. Again, like this isn't like a party issue. It's like you start to see more Republicans band together when folks start to see these threats. Like you see people start to be like, all right, look, we're not gonna, whatever we're doing here is not gonna be at the whim of one individual, and he's not gonna threaten us into doing it. And, I've seen a few people make this point, but these folks have jobs and families, and most of them are like they're part-time legislature. It's not like a legislature that's full-time. They're not getting paid a ton. It's not like a very luxurious job. They're there to do the people's work, and they don't have a ton of people that are pushing them in a lot of different directions. And I think the people that bought into whatever you do for Donald Trump will gain you favor in some capacity. You saw on full display when they walked up to the podium last week and just talked about how they needed to cheat for him. And that was the only reason they should do this.
Yeah. No. I mean, it was such a, such a wonderful display of true loyalty to country over party, which is, really unfortunately.
Or person.
Very right. Exactly.
Because, I mean, to be clear, I mean, we say country over party, but like every poll that was put in the field showed tremendous anxiety from both Democrats and Republicans against this, right?
Yeah.
It was not like, like when we say people over party, it's not the party. This is just people over small cabal of Donald Trump and like a group of Republicans that think that they can get this cheat done to deliver the House of Representatives next year.
Right. And speaking of, there's still, unfortunately, a lot more time. We're coming to the end of the year, and likely, a little bit of a pause in new maps, but never say never. I've learned that in this job, if anything else, as the end of the year comes toward us. But as we enter 2026, there's going to be a lot happening. And then, unfortunately, as much as, we would love to see what the Republicans have done in Indiana as an indication that the party is not going to continue to bend to Donald Trump's whims, there are a lot more states that have indicated that they are going to redraw, Florida being chief among them. The legislature there and Ron DeSantis are very eager to see who can out extreme one another, and be the craziest gerrymander on the block. So, Florida is one state. We expect Kansas. I think there are rumors that Nebraska, and then there are a number of states based on potential Supreme Court case that we've talked about, Louisiana v. Calais, that could redraw and that have moved their calendars to allow them to try to gerrymander further if they feel like they get the green light, Alabama, Louisiana, South Carolina. So there's a lot still potentially coming. And then on the flip side, the response from Democratic states also is in motion in Virginia, in Maryland. And there's litigation in New York. There's litigation still ongoing in Utah, where a state court struck down the state legislature's unfair map and chose a fair map that the plaintiffs in that case, the voters seeking a fair map, were asking for. So, but there's still a lot of moving pieces. So, unfortunately, there's a lot more to come before we get to a settled map for 2026. This is, many months more of this kind of work ahead of us.
I'm glad you said that, Marina, because I do think a lot of folks saw Indiana and felt like maybe this is the end. And as much as I would love it to be, it's simply not. We're in the middle. We're still in the middle. So folks should be prepared. And, I see two major events coming early, sometime next year. We don't know when, but just for everybody to keep on their radar for moments, if you're looking for a moment that's going to be like a critical mass of redistricting content, when the Supreme Court rules on Section 2, or related to Section 2, we will have a whole bunch of new content and a lot to focus on. A lot of people should be plugged in for that. And then I do think once we see maps in Florida, it's going to generate a lot of interest, because they could go for anywhere between 3 to 5 seats in Florida. I should say that's what they're saying.
Right.
That's what the rumors are out of DeSantis's camp and out of the 2 state legislative chambers, that they're going to go for somewhere between 3 and 5 seats. And I'm not sure most folks are fully prepared for that. Mm-hmm. Or this is going to feel a lot more like Texas than it did some of the states that were a little quieter in this process. But I just want to prepare people for that in the coming year.
It's good. Yeah, no, I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of bad behavior coming up, in Florida in particular, and from the Supreme Court. I think we expect to see, a lot of nonsense. But the other thing that we should very quickly let folks know about, as we are wrapping up this year and looking forward to another big year of redistricting action. See what I did there?
I do.
Hey. Our affiliate, the National Redistricting Action Fund, is the 501c4 affiliate of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. And that is the entity through which the grassroots redistricting work that needs to happen is happening. And we have announced a very exciting launch last week of Redistricting Action, which is the new and improved glow up version of what was formerly called All on the Line. And this is the platform for all of the important work that needs to be done at the grassroots level to get you all involved in everything that's happening. All of these, different states that we just talked about, all of the work that needs to be done requires so many people to be involved, to get involved, to speak up on behalf of their communities, to speak up on behalf of a fair process, to speak up on behalf of the need for a representative democracy at the national level, at the state level, in your community. It's so important. So you can go to redistrictingaction.org. And it's super easy once you get there to, sign up for a newsletter, figure out where you can go and volunteer, or figure out how to get involved, how to get information that is specific to your state. And so, please go and check that out. We also have a new website for NDRC, which is super cool and has some really cool new mapping features. Everybody should go to democraticredistricting.com as well and check that out. It's a really, really exciting moment for us as we, know how much work is going to continue as we come. And We've been saying it for a long time, and this year really, really cemented it. We are in an era of perpetual redistricting. This is no longer once every 10 years we do this. And so we, felt it was really important to reflect that new reality. And Redistricting Action is the place to go, the place to be, to get involved so that you can be part of this fight. All right.
What a year.
What a year, 2025. Okay, cool. Well, guys, we're still going to be here in 2026. I hope that folks get some rest. I hope you get time with your family and friends. I hope you get to put your feet up a little bit. This is a marathon, so we will continue to be here. We'll see you soon. If you like our show and you want to stay with us in the new year, please make sure you're following us on YouTube and Instagram at Dem Redistrict. You can, as I said, visit us our website at democraticredistricting.com. Also, check out redistrictingaction.org and follow us on all the socials there. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the new year.
Thank you, folks. See you soon.
This show is produced by Reed Dudley, Sophia Pedroso, and Manuel Marce. Special thanks to Alex Yang. Editing and mixing by Play Pretend Media. This podcast is paid for by the National Democratic Redistricting Committee.